Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, as the case may be. And thanks so much for joining us at this special webinar being held during International Women's Week to honor all of the women participating in this webinar today, either as attendees or speakers, as well as all the other women on the planet, right? So, for those of you that I haven't met earlier, my name is Shirish Pathak. I have worked at Fintelekt for the last 2 decades, having founded it almost 25 years ago. I think I have been incredibly lucky to have been supported through this journey by some very talented women, and it's actually taken us a long time at Fintelect to organize something like this in the public domain to acknowledge the contribution of women, especially in the compliance ecosystem. One of the reasons for this, I think, is that when one looks at the concept of dedicating one day in a year to women, it can be quite polarizing. Since some women are appreciative of the acknowledgement, and there are others who believe that the fact that a day is required to be allocated specifically for this purpose is in itself an indicator of the failure in society to accord the due respect and position to women that they deserve. Be that as it may, as a company which incidentally consists of 85% women, we decided to take the plunge and organize this webinar today, which is actually a series of three mini panel discussions with 16 strong and talented women panelists who will share their thoughts with all of us today. Personally, I'm a firm believer in the concept that Women's Day needs to be celebrated because I think that we need to formally, at least once in a year, acknowledge the contribution of women not just at work but in life as well. While the focus of the webinar today is firmly on the topic of AML CFT, in fact, as I mentioned, three subtopics that we will cover during the course of the next 90 minutes, it is also a good opportunity to recognize the many women who are contributing meaningfully to the field of financial crime compliance and risk management in so many organizations across the AML safety ecosystem and making the world a safer and better place. So here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them not just in our personal lives, but in our professional lives as well, and build the next set of women leaders. Let me now request my esteemed colleague, a person that I'm lucky to count as a dear friend and confidant, Arpita Bidekar, also our Chief Operating Officer at Fintelekt, to start the session proper. Arpita, over to you.
Thank you, Shirish, and a very good day to everyone. Let me start by wishing all the women who have logged in today a very happy Women's Day, Women's Week. And to all the men who have logged in today, thank you for supporting the women in your lives. And as Shirish said, let's hope that you continue to do that. To be very honest, I am one of those women who prefer a world where we didn't have to have a special day for women. But yes, I do realize it's important to recognize the achievements of women and to acknowledge how far we have come. And who better than to embody that progress than this group of distinguished, wonderful women that I have with me today, all accomplished leaders in the domain of AML and compliance, and also representing multiple sectors and stakeholders. So today, we have the opportunity to listen to a wide range of perspectives over the next 2 hours. So, in terms of the format, as Shirish said, we will have three mini panel discussions of about 30 minutes each, one after the other. And we have tried to design them as conversations. We don't have any presentations today, so that it's an opportunity to share experiences and hopefully offer some words of wisdom, some practical advice to the next generation of compliance professionals. So to all the attendees, please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box during the session, and we'll try to have some questions taken at the end of every panel and then also as a combined Q&A towards the end of the session. We're also going to run some polls, so you will all also have the opportunity to contribute to this dialogue. So let's begin with the first panel, and let me request my first set of panelists to be there on audio and video. I know all of you are already. In the interests of time, we're going to keep the introductions really short. My apologies because, we are unable to actually go through all the achievements of the women that are on the panel. But what we've done in lieu of that is to add a LinkedIn profile link below the photograph of each panelist on our website. And let me request my colleague Divyani to share the link on in the chat so that you can go and actually refer to their LinkedIn profiles and see all of their achievements. So let's meet the panelists for the first session. We have Teja Dedu Patberia, Deputy Director, Financial Intelligence Unit of Sri Lanka. We have Aarti Shekhar, Chief Compliance Officer, Kotak Mahindra Prime from India. We have Guada Vergel de Dios, Chief Compliance Officer of Mizuho Bank in the Philippines. Also from the Philippines, we have Leni Miraflores Benko, who's the Director of Compliance at Han Resorts. And we have Uma Venkatraman, CEO and co-founder of Excite Technologies from India. Welcome, ladies, and great to have you all here. If I may dive right into the conversation, because we have, a small time allocated to every panel. So in financial crime compliance, most of the work is often behind the scenes, right? Work is quiet, and it sometimes requires taking positions that may not always be popular, but it's necessary to protect the institution and the financial system. And this naturally requires a lot of courage, judgment, and leadership, and that's what we want to discuss on the opening panel. Teja is the regulator on this group, and I'm going to start with you. From your interactions with reporting entities in Sri Lanka as the FIU, what do you think, when you see organizations, what do you think distinguishes certain organizations where the compliance function is, a genuine influence over risk decisions versus those where it remains largely procedural or reactive? Teja, over to you.
Thank you so much, Apita, for this opportunity. It's really an honor to join this special discussion on International Women's Day. In AML and governance, the challenges we face are require leaders who can combine technical expertise with courage, empathy, and principal judgment, right? So I think I'm in the right panel. These are qualities that women across our sectors bring forward every day, right? And through the FIU's work, we see firsthand that institutions led by such voices make stronger, more responsible risk decisions. So today's conversation is not just about compliance, it's about celebrating the leadership mindset that women contribute to this space. Answering to your question, Apita, I am happy to contribute. Yes, from our interactions at the FIU, we see very clear differences between institutions where compliance has real influence and those where it remains procedural or reactive. Yes, you're correct. To contribute to how to showcase these differences, the distinctions usually comes down to three indicators. If I explain you those three indicators, those are positioning, capability, and culture. So if we talk about first the positioning, in institutions where compliance has genuine influence, the function is positions at decision-making table at the top, right? Not after that, not below it. So compliance leaders are involved early in product design, onboarding of higher risk relationship, and strategic decisions, right? So the compliance leaders' involvement, they are early birds at earlier stages, even in designing products, decision making, strategic discussions. Their involvement is everywhere rather than being asked for a sign off at the end. So we call them that is procedural, right? So where compliance is procedural, we see the opposite. Risk conversation happens elsewhere, and compliance is only asked to what? Tick the box. So that is my experience as the regulator. And my second indicator was capability. The positioning I explained, the capability. Influential compliance teams demonstrate strong analytical capacity and judgment, right? They don't simply restate the rules, they interpret the rule, articulate the risk, and offer credible risk based alternatives to the business because they add value in decision making. Their views carry weight. In reactive environment also, we see in both financial institutions as well as DNFBPs as well as virtual service providers. In reactive environments, the institutions function focus mainly on checklists, templates, and retrospective monitoring, which limits its influence, right? And third, my third indicator was culture. It's very, very important. Um, the most importantly, institutions with strong compliance influence have a culture of accountability and psychological safety. We have to be very brave. To act bravely, we need safety. So, escalation are encouraged, not penalized. Senior management actively asks compliance. What are we missing rather than treating AML issues as compliance problems alone? In reactive institutions, the opposite, the culture is still one of minimum compliance where avoiding findings is more important than managing risk. So, those are my observations. So, ultimately, genuine influence comes when compliance is seen not as a barrier, but as a strategic advisor or the partner, right? Partner, strategic advisor whose insight improve quality and integrity of risk decisions. That shifts from rule executor to trusted risk partner is what separate mature institutions from the rest. So those are my experience. If I concise my answer from the FIU interaction with all the reporting institutions, financial institutions, DNFBPs, and WASP in Sri Lanka, there are three clear differences between places where compliance genuinely shapes risk decisions and those where it remains procedural as a uh, ticking boxes. So we see early involvement versus end stage sign off, even in very large scale financial institutions as well as DNFPPs. And also, we see risk based judgment versus checklist mentality, very terrible. And then we see culture of ownership versus minimum compliance mindset. We have to be really careful. That's why at the beginning I said this has to be this tone, compliance tone has to be set from the top, and it has to be culture and part and parcel of the business decision making. It should not be seen as barrier. Yes, in Sri Lanka we see most of in informal regulatory environment, most of institutions consider compliance as part and parcel of their business. However, still challenging there are institutions. So therefore, you take the strategy education. Education we see as a strategy, so we make them aware the importance of compliance being their advisor or the strategic partner. I hope I answered your question, and if you
Absolutely.
need more clarification, I'm really happy to contribute more.
Sure. Thank you so much, Teja. And yes, what you said about compliance being a strategic advisor and partner, I think will resonate with most of the leaders here on this panel. Let me now bring in Aarti. Aarti from the non-banking finance sector, which often operates in a very dynamic environment where growth, innovation, financial inclusion goals, regulatory expectations are all pulling compliance into different directions. So in this highly competitive context, how does a compliance function exercise its leadership, especially when you have all these pressures colliding with AML and governance safeguards? Aarti.
Thanks, Arpita. Privileged to be part of this panel and interesting starting off with Madam Teja and listening to her perspectives from the FIU Sri Lanka. And happy Women's Day to all the women here in the panel as well as the participants. So to answer your question, Arpita, I would just think of it this way. Imagine we are driving a car on the highway and we are going on a vacation. So we are all excited and we are going at full speed. Okay. So then you find there is a toll and then you find there is a speed breaker and then you have to slow down a bit, right? So sometimes compliance can be like that. You can look at it like kind of a speed breaker. So the businesses would say, "Oh, you are slowing us down. We want to move at a faster pace." So compliance and AML and all these checks that we have to do can slow the business down. On the other side, if I go too fast, I can get reckless and I can harm myself, right? So there is a very balanced approach that is needed here. I would call it a balanced friction, okay, balanced regulatory friction. So we don't want to be a roadblock and we don't want to, also go too fast. So I would see myself as a gatekeeper that way. I think compliance and AML functions, we are essentially gatekeepers. We are trying to protect the organization, right? So having said that, sometimes the business does have, there are pressures, especially in the evolving markets that we have. There are new products, the commercial challenges that you mentioned, it's a competitive environment. But I think, like Madam rightly said, on the compliance culture, right? I think it boils down to that. If the top-down culture is that of compliance, there is a strong compliance culture, and there is accountability. There is understanding at every level, junior, mid-management, senior management, that compliance is a non-negotiable, right? Then I think these challenges would be better to navigate. They wouldn't go away and they shouldn't go away because that healthy friction is needed between business and compliance. But if that appreciation of compliance is there, then I think it is easier to navigate our roles in the organization. So I think compliance should be seen not as as an enemy of innovation. We are actually a friend that you never knew you wanted, but it's also a friend. So it's not a necessary evil. I hate being, someone, if someone says compliance is a necessary evil. No, I think we are the friend that the organization needs and they never knew that they needed. So I think that is the positioning that as a compliance and a governance officer, I would like to take.
Right. Thank you so much, Aarti. Such interesting insights from what you said about a friend that you never knew you needed, and I like the idea of the balanced friction that you brought in. Guada, if I may, turn to you now, and perhaps you can share your perspective from the banking side and from your previous experiences. I believe in international banks, the challenge can become even more complex, right? Because again, there are multiple layers of expectations that come in because you have to balance local regulatory expectations with group level policies plus international standards. How do you navigate situations where these pressures don't fully align, and any practical experiences that you can help share here for the audience?
Thanks, Arpita, and hi to everybody. And congratulations to Fintelekt for organizing this very, I guess, relevant discussion. Nice to see women leaders in AML and compliance space. So I guess I don't even know if I have a correct answer to that question, Arpita, because it's in every instance there is a fluid decision making that you have to do. I guess you are just guided by the overall mandate that if there are really conflict in local or international laws or regulation or even internal processes, um, the best course of action is to really look at which is the stricter requirement, right, as far as AML is concerned. But then again, I guess with that kind of mentality, and this is where your creativity and I guess your persuading power and all of the kinds of powers that you have as a compliance officer at that would come into play, because this is where you have to balance what the local business would require as opposed to what the the mandate from the head office or even from the local regulations would require. And I said, and I think it's well explained already by Artie or even Teja earlier, where you really have to strike that balance, right? A balance in such a way that you don't really try to sacrifice local requirements as well as international regulation in the view of really just putting forward or advocating for what the business would want. So you will always be in that situation. I guess all of the compliance officer would know that. And there is really no straight answer. It's really trying to have that mindset and always with that foundational mindset as a compliance officer that you really have to find a solution. You cannot just tell business, no, it's not doable because of this and that. Or you cannot just try to prevent head office from trying to rule out certain requirements because it's stricter than what the local requirements are. So it's finding that mix. And I guess just to add to what RT says, aside from a friend that you don't need, compliance at times can be an artist, a magician, all rolled into one just because we try to, and that it's not just pulling something from like your magician hat. It's really trying to understand what the rationale and the purpose and what the laws regulation would say, so that you can try to use by analogy the requirements, right? If you don't have a specific written laws or regulation for certain business cases or products, then you should be I guess strong-willed enough to advocate a position not just to your business but to your regulators at times, right? So that they can understand that even in the absence of certain written specific regulation, the rationale for the requirement can be achieved by alternative measure or processes. So long answer to something, but in short, uh finding the right balance without really sacrificing, going through the route of what the mandate is, so that if you cannot really comply with it, there are other ways and means that you can do to achieve the intended purpose.
Thank you, Goda. And again, love what you said about compliance being an art and the compliance officer being a magician. Let me bring in Leni at this stage. Some sectors themselves have a risk profile that probably adds another dimension. Leni represents the gaming and casino sector, which is probably always under scrutiny, often viewed as particularly high risk from a financial crime perspective. So Leni, always being under the spotlight, what does leadership and courage look like, in your sector, when ensuring strong AML controls in this kind of environment, which is driven by customer experience and often high value transactions? What has been your experience? Leni, you're on mute. You'll have to unmute. Yes.
Thank you, Arpita. Thank you, Fintelekt, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm coming from a casino industry in the Philippines. So many see AML as just paperwork and filing reports. But in our world, real courage is speaking in a meeting with the casino's top decision makers and saying we have a new regulatory order and we need to implement it. in a fast-paced environment like a casino, the compliance officer is often the person bringing more work to an already busy team. So it takes guts not just to deliver that news, but to stand your ground and guide those leaders to agree with your recommendations and knowing it impacts their operations. And on leadership, to me, leadership is about transforming our image, especially whenever we conduct compliance checks in our casino. I always tell my team that we are not here to police our colleagues or to find fault or to look for errors. Instead, we are here to be their guides. Our mission as the AML compliance department is to keep the company compliant while helping our colleagues navigate with these complex rules. And also, I always keep an open line of communication with our department heads and senior management so they can talk openly about their operational challenges and yeah, so we can work through them together.
Thank you. I think that's where, what Teja said about being a partner to business would probably have a lot more importance. And I think at this stage, it might be useful to reflect a little on the leadership journey itself. And Uma, let me turn to you. Thank you so much for waiting. You've had a very interesting career path moving from banking into technology leadership. And I know you founded a company along with another very strong woman that I really admire, Savita. So over your journey, you've probably seen an evolution in the role of women as professionals, as leaders. So what do you think are the strengths that women leaders in particular can inherently bring, to the table in the compliance profession?
Yeah, thank you, Arpita, and thank you for the very nice words. And great meeting all of you women here, strong women, and those whose photographs I cannot see or videos. As she explained, I'm probably one of those right now on this panel who's speaking from the outside. All of you are, I have worked in banks, but we are an IT, I won't say IT, I will call ourselves as solution providers to solve this problem of AML risk compliance. So so the question is about women. So we deal with women within our organization and deal with women in our clients as well. So there are strong women both inside and at the client's place, and both are equally interested in managing compliance very strongly. All of you have said the right things. Just before coming here, I just checked up and I found out that the Company Secretaries Institute, which actually is responsible for compliance officers, apart from the legal universities, law universities, 50% are women. And from 40%, it has gone up to 50% over the last decade. And it's growing, the number of admissions. So there is growing interest by women in this area. So typically, it was seen as a safe career, and our dealings with compliance teams and women were quite limited. The last year, it has significantly increased. The last 2 years, both me and my colleague deal with various aspects. So, number one, good quality is yes, they are extremely ethical and extremely safety conscious. Okay, very, very careful that they need to read every line. They need to ensure all the, I'm speaking in a positive way, but I'll also give some suggestions if it's okay with Arpita. So very careful, very, very, proper at the documentation, want to go through all the, dot the I's and cross the T's. They also want to sometimes they are responsible to other members in their organization, so they try to bring those teams also as well on the call, and they try to collaborate well and make sure things are fine. So in fact, all these qualities are great and they're very intelligent. Most people who come into law, who come into compliance, naturally are intelligent. So intelligence combined with the need for safety and protection, just like you protect your house, right? If you have an issue, you'll protect your house. You'll want to ensure that you're safe from any kind of future disasters, anything. The same thing goes with organization. Now, we are also think of ourselves as partners. I'm a woman, so is my colleague. We also want to protect the client. That's my uppermost thought anytime, because we deal not only with solutions, we also deal with other processes. So my only two bit suggestions which are there here, I heard some very nice things from all of you. Some mentioned magician, I've written it down. They should be like a friend. We are not policing, etc. But I feel when it comes to people like us, who are working for the organization, there is a need to overprotect, and there is a need to add so many clauses because time is so short, and sometimes the business gets affected. They want the work to happen, but until everything is signed and done, nothing can move. I still think it's early days in compliance. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of worry as well. If something should go wrong, then what? So this fear itself immobilizes the inability to take a decision. We being women are a little more worried than probably a man would. And if this we take care, it'll really help the flow. Okay, so that's all I can tell.
Thank you, Uma. Thank you so much. I'm conscious that Aarti and Gwada had told me that they have to step out for another meeting. Feel free to, exit whenever it's required. Again, thank you so much for joining. We'll keep the conversation going. Teja, I'm going to come back to you for one more question before we move to the next panel. And, something that I've always wondered myself. There are a lot of areas within regulation that are still evolving, right, at a very fast pace, and where regulated institutions themselves expect a lot of leadership from the regulators, a lot of hand holding and the ability to provide direction when the regulators themselves know that the space is evolving. So in such situations, how do you play the role of the leader, effectively, and what are the challenges that you typically encounter?
Thank you, Arpita. It's a really good question. I think it's a timely question because when you asked this question, I was thinking, okay, I will explain why regulatory expectations are evolving, right? So that is the base of this question, because regulatory expectations are evolving because we are in a risk landscape and our risks are always evolving. Criminals, they're very smart, so they adapt early. Criminally, they are innovative. Those days, they broke our houses. House breaking incidents were reported in news media. Nowadays, no more house breaking. They break our accounts. They hack our accounts. So they are evolving. Criminals innovative, and technology progress. FATF standards, we are very familiar with FATF requirements. They are changing continuously and evolving. And when it comes to national risk landscape also shifting, and supervisory findings especially. I work as a lady in a leading regulatory institution in Sri Lanka. So as per our supervisory finding, they reveal there are so many gaps in the market. So we need to address those gaps. And when the threat landscape moves, regulators must move with it, right? Yeah. So the goal isn't to burden institutions, but it is to keep the financial system protected against new dynamic forms of money laundering and terrorist financing. So that's the expectation. So that's why regulatory expectations are often evolving. And when it comes to institutions, they need to escalate complex and sensitive issues to FIU or to the particular regulator. Why? Mainly, they are legally required, and um, they are legally required, and FIU can act on intelligence that financial institutions actually can't, and guidance is needed when rules are not clear, guidelines are not clear, and escalation strengthens national risk understanding, right? So we have a particular understanding when you escalate, so it strengthens our understanding. It demonstrates strong compliance governance, and when you escalate FIU can manage systemic threats, because when each and every institution escalate sensitive areas so we can build up typologies and we can manage systemic threats. We can early identify and sensitive matters that require FIU's oversight. So that is basically my explanation. So when regulatory expectations are evolving, whether due to new standards or new typologies or supervisory findings, the FIU expects financial institutions, DNFBPs like casinos, now the lady presented, and vast virtual services providers to escalate complex or sensitive issues in a structured, transparent, and well-reasoned manner. So that support as the regulator we require from our financial institutions and the NFPPs. So for an example, your escalation has to be clearly articulated of the issue and why it is sensitive. So you need to clearly tell the regulator why it is sensitive. So if you expect institution to explain what the issue is, why it is complex, and what risk it may pose, right? If you do not tell, we do not clearly understand. If you tell us a half-baked story, and if you are trying to hide some important information, then regulator can't have the full picture. So if I give you an example, now FIU Sri Lanka receives escalation queries when institutions face uncertainties about emerging risks such as virtual currency related or trade-based money laundering. So FIU expects institution when they escalating, define the problem clearly, explain why regulatory guidance is unclear, already given, and provide the risk implication for the institution. So this ensures that FIU can respond with the sector-wide advisory where required or where needed. And also, it has to be evidence of international assessment and reasoned judgment should be there. Though we are in AI world with full of AI, artificial intelligence, and so many advanced technologies, but FIU expects human involvement, expert judgment as well. FIU expect that before escalation, the institution has conducted an internal analysis, right? So this is very, very important. Without conducting an internal analysis, and the institution should attempt higher level approval with the AML governance structure and reviewed available guidance and laws before escalating. So FIU, when dealing with concerns raised by financial institutions or DNFBPs on complex structuring in remittances, for an example, or explicitly required institutions. So internal risk assessment should be sound, senior management deliberations should be there, and options considered demonstrate that the escalation was not simply first response but a thoughtful decision by the compliance team. And if I further explain, taking few seconds, so there should be transparency when you escalate, as well as the confidentiality should be maintained when you escalate. So if you expect that what facts are confirmed, what aspects remain uncertain, you need to clearly explain the regulator and what further information is needed. Then only your escalation helps FIU to understand the institution's limitation and provide targeted advices how to mitigate or manage that risk. So likewise, in summary, if I explain, when escalating an issue to the FIU, institutions be mindful that an escalation should be a clearly defined one and contextualized issue and evidence of internal analysis and governance, transparency on knowns and unknowns as well, and a strong risk-based justification and timely communication. If you keep analyzing further and further, then the criminal will win, right? And complete documentation. I should emphasize that all the risk profile of the customer and what are customers' other relationships, their behavior, and the unnecessary questions posed by the customer. Everything, if you can document very well, and if it is the escalation constructive and partnership oriented approach, if the company is having secure handling of sensitive information, because when it comes to reporting, tipping off is really, really important. So the confidentiality should be there. So these are the FIU's expectation when escalating a sensitive, complex matter to FIU for FIU's guidance. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Teja. Thank you, ladies. This has been very insightful. I think perfect start to this three-panel session. Thank you so much for joining. I think we'll have to take questions towards the end in the interests of time. And now let me welcome our next group of panelists. Please can you, switch on your audio and video and let me introduce all of them. As I said earlier, we have their LinkedIn profiles below their photographs on our website, so I would encourage you to go and refer to that. So for our second panel discussion, I'm delighted to welcome Neeti Ganesan, Country Head of Waystone in Singapore, Siv Chanwalek, Head of Compliance, Woori Bank from Cambodia, Attorney Nalit Manakap, Chief Country Compliance Officer from Citibank in the Philippines. We have Tilani, Punyavansa, Chief Compliance Officer, DFCC Bank from Sri Lanka. We have Munni Raj Bhandari, Chief Operating Officer of Nepal Clearing House from Nepal, and Shubhada Bhave, Head of Legal, Business Development and Client Engagement with Diligent Risk Solutions, also from Singapore. Ladies, welcome. I think one theme that came through very clearly in the first panel is that compliance leadership often requires influence and the courage to speak up. But the role of compliance itself is also evolving, right? And that compliance is no longer, as we saw, not just a control function. And organizations, as Teja said, are looking to compliance leaders to contribute early on in the decision making and to provide a trusted partnership. But while this idea of compliance as a strategic partner is probably easier said than done, in practice, in reality, it can vary widely across organizations. Attorney Nalit, let me start with you today for this second panel discussion on Beyond Checklists, Women as Strategic Risk Advisors. From your experience in banking, what differentiates a compliance leader who's seen as a strategic partner from one who's perceived primarily as a control function?
Good afternoon, Arpita. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the local banking industry compliance officer association, just like wanted to greet everyone a happy International Women's Day or month rather. Uh, to answer your question, Arpita, I think the key differentiator between a strategic partner and a mere control function, no, is really mindset. When I say mindset, I refer to two things. One is we should look at compliance officers beyond mere gatekeepers, but as builders of pathway. I'll elaborate on the term on builders of pathway later. But the second mindset that I'm referring to is positive intent. Almost always, people in our organization normally would want to comply. Right? It's rare that we see egregious people who are really bent on breaking the law or regulations, right? So the almost always the case is that it's challenging to comply. There are uh, roadblocks and everything, but they do want to comply. There is that intent. So our role as builders of pathways is to help the business, help our organization find that path of compliance so that at the same time, they are able to comply but achieve corporate goals as well. So, how do we do this? Earlier in the first panel, they alluded to time of engagement. It's very important that we should be engaged or part of the discussion early on. So at the concept stage, it's so hard to be at the tail end when everything has been drawn up and planned, and then you're just there to say yes or no, right? That shouldn't be the case. We should be part of the conceptual stage so that at early in the game, we already provide our inputs, our insights. After all, we are supposed to be the subject matter experts of local regulations, right? And then second, when we to better contribute or be more effective in building that pathway, we should be business savvy or at least understand our products, our services, our operations, how we do things internally, as well as the local industry landscape. Because it's not just enough that you know the regulations, we should be able also to align it or apply it, have practical solutions on the ground. So we should know our business. It's not enough that we know regulations, policies, and standards. We should know the business as well. And related to that mindset of being a builder of pathway, we should focus on having solutions. So when the business comes to us having a question or a problem, it should not just be a simple yes or no. We should veer away from binary responses. I think Tija in the earlier panel discussion alluded to that as well. We cannot just say yes or no, not allowed. We can say this initial proposal is like a total violation of the regulation, but provide them alternative solutions. Perhaps we can do this, you can do it this way. Solution one, fully mitigated. Solution two is partially mitigated, but these are the additional, perhaps, controls that we can implement. So always be part of the solutioning. We are builders after all, no? We're not just merely gatekeepers.
Thank you, Attorney Lalit. I think that's a very nice way of putting it. Neeti, I'm going to bring you into the conversation, and from your experience in Singapore, working with different types of institutions, the expectations placed on compliance teams. Even during this conversation, we've seen so many different keywords being attached to compliance. From a capacity building perspective, how do you see the role of compliance evolving in financial institutions across Asia, starting from technical rule implementation, interpretation rather, to strategic risk advisory? How should training and communication within the institution adapt to support this transition?
Thank you, Arpita, and very happy to be here today. So I come from a unique perspective, as what you mentioned, from a compliance consulting experience where we're dealing with different types of financial institutions. We see different types of business models, and we obviously have the background knowledge and the interpretation of the rules and the regulations that are applicable for the different types of license holders in Singapore. So I think going to the question of, how do we see roles changing, evolving from just a mere rule interpretation to, are we looking at compliance becoming more of a forward-looking strategic advisor type of a role? I would say that is the direction that we see most firms heading, or rather that they want to be at, and they view the compliance as more of a partner rather than as just a rule-based rule interpretation kind of a role. And I think that also depends on the compliance structure of the organization, right? So if you have a company which is a quite a pretty small firm, and they have one compliance officer, whether that person, the experience of the person, whether it's a junior compliance officer or they a senior compliance officer who has many years of experience dealing with more of a strategic advisory role, that really does matter, because you can't expect that from a person who has only had 2 years of experience, who might be, assisting the firm on a compliance program or a compliance role. So I think the makeup of the compliance team is important. The experience of the individuals doing the role has to be, taken into consideration if we want the compliance to move and be seen as more than just a rule interpreter to being a more of a business strategic advisor. I think that is key. And then the other way to look at it is also what kind of external help is needed. Again, it looks at the business form, the type of activities that they do, and what kind of additional advisory support that is needed. It could be from a consulting firm like us. It could be from an external legal counsel to kind of supplement and complement the existing compliance infrastructure that the financial institution has. And then going on to the topic of training, I think technical knowledge of the compliance officer will always be key and important because that's the bread and butter. You need to know the rules. You need to understand what the regulatory requirements are, especially for the type of license that the financial institution holds. But I think increasingly to be seen as a strategic business partner, the compliance individuals also need to understand the market as well. For example, what sort of how is the business making revenue, for example, the firm that they work for, right? What sort of products do they sell? Who is the target audience? Who are the customers that they serve? What sort of products is it a derivatives products? Is it just a pure vanilla securities type of products that the company is involved in? I think that financial market product knowledge is also increasingly important for the compliance officer to really understand and apply the rules to the business, and then be able to go to the business and say, okay, I think these are the rule changes, but how does this affect our business, given that this is what we do, this is the market that we operate in.
Right. Thank you. So essentially saying it's the technical knowledge, and as Attorney Nalit said earlier, it's about also knowing your business very well so that you can provide that input. Tilani, let me turn to you. And I think we also need to understand what kind of obstacles and struggles are there in the way of reaching really that shift from, being a control function to an advisor. In your experience, what kind of barriers often prevent compliance functions from, being viewed as trusted advisors, and how can compliance leaders actually overcome them within their institution? Tilani, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Apita. And I consider this as both a privilege and an honor to be here today. Thank you for the opportunity given. So this is a very important question. I think the key concepts were more or less covered by the other panelists here as well. I see several barriers. The first would be we are considered as the department of no. Now we have to come out of that concept. I think few of my colleagues mentioned this fact. If for each and every new proposal or each and every new process, if we start to say no, then we will be considered as the no department, and that is something we can't get out of. But if we can provide solutions, if we can learn to say, rather than saying no, if we can say how to do something and provide some sort of a mechanism to come out of the situation, then I think we can change its perception and be, get out of this barrier that is imposed for the compliance community. And the other thing would be the late involvement. Then again, this concept was also covered. If we get involved, maybe a new product, maybe a new process, if we get involved at the approval level, then it's very difficult to bring in the controls, because by that time, the business teams have invested their time and effort in this process. So once we say at the approval stage, when we bring in the controls, they see us as a barrier. So the solution would be to get involved at the very early stage and be actually to get involved when the concepts are forming. If we can get involved at that level, then we can bring in, we can ask the necessary questions. How are you going to manage the KYC CDD? How are you going to manage the controls? How are you going to perceive these products or processes being misused? Then we can bring in the right risk questions and mitigate the risk at that level. So when the end product or the end procedure is put out, then we will be a part of that process. And the other thing is, I think that is the most important thing, is the communication. Anything, any relationship or any event could be make or break with the right level of communication. Now, our compliance community, most of us are, I think, lawyers. And when we speak, we relate to our regulatory terminology. We bring in these heavy words. then of course the business teams wouldn't understand this. What we need to do is when you speak to them, when we elaborate something, when we give our justification or the basis, we got to go down to their level, use their terminology, explain in their way how the customer would be impacted, how this would impact the bottom line of the company or the bank. Then they would understand what we're talking about, and then it's very easy to convince them and agree upon certain things. And so finally, I would say, Apta, it's a trust that we build in the team, within the team, how we like present ourselves, how we become part of like member of the team, and communicate and build a relationship that is both beneficial for the bank, for yourself, and ensure the bank or the company functions within the stipulated regulatory framework. So I think those are the barriers and the ways we can come out of it.
So become Department of How from Department of No, right?
Yes.
That's fantastic, Kalani. Right. I'm now going to turn to Siv, and take your inputs also on the practical steps really that a compliance function can take to ensure that it is involved early in the product development, in market expansions, in partnership decisions. What can you do as the compliance department to get in early on the game?
Thank you for the opportunity and hi to everyone here. So yeah, so while early involvement from the compliant may sometimes perceived as time consuming or potentially slow down the innovations. So in reality, it's a sustainable business success that must always operate with the boundary of the law. So if compliant control are not properly implemented, the consequence can be severe and may ultimately disrupt or even damage the business itself. So compliance is often perceived as having no business mindset, simply enforcing rules without providing practical guidance. However, the role of compliance is not to find way to bend or to avoid the law, but to provide a clear advisory perspective on how business initiative can be implemented. So responsibly while remaining within the regulations expectations. The intention is not for the compliant to be involved in every operational detail. Rather, compliance should be focused and understand where is the risk may emerge within the business activity and how can those risks can be controlled before it's materialized. Preventive oversight is always more effective than attempting to address the issue after they occur when it may already be too late. So my last thought is that at the same time, business units must also maintain vigilance, develop a strong understanding of their own risk exposure. Compliance should not be seen as a sole keeper of the risk as our fellow panelists have mentioned. Ultimately, risk owner still remain in the business. Decision should not be relied solely on whether compliance giving the approval, but on whether the initiative is genuinely aligned with the sound risk management and responsible governance. So mainly, the governance is very important. So we have to enforce this understanding, understand the risk taker, understand the risk owner, understanding the role and how to act on those things is very important in the path of practical. So if we did not have a clear understanding, it's becoming like a stopper. Either it's compliant always say no, we are not allowed this and that. So yeah, so on. So this is a very important mindset to understand from the management, from the business perspective. Yeah. So that is all from me.
I think there's some technical
Yeah, I
problem.
think.
Um, Hi, just give us a second. I think Arpita's dropped out. Uh, Let us just give her a minute to get back on. Thanks, Sid, for that answer. Just hang on for a minute. All right. So let me just, on behalf of Arpita, continue. I was about to ask the next question, but I'll leave it to you again.
Yes, I'm so sorry about this. Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
I can.
Yeah, sorry. These are unavoidable, I think.
Yes.
So I think, Siv, you were explaining so well about, early product development. I'm getting into the scene early. And now I'm going to bring in Munni at this point into the conversation. I think Siv referred to a very interesting thing about strategic risk management and the importance of the compliance officer really knowing the risk and making sure that everybody else that's involved in the process also understands the risk. But today, increasingly, there's a lot of collaboration that's required. You, as the operating head, across multiple functions, not just compliance and business, but also technology, operations. And in the payments and transaction ecosystems, I think this is becoming very, very dynamic. So how do you see this collaboration evolving and, to address emerging financial crime risks across payment ecosystems?
Uh, Thank you, Arpita, for the question. And really honored to be part of this discussion today. Happy Women's Day, Women's Week to all the panelists out here and the participant. Uh, Embedding compliance for the collaboration between the various stakeholders within the company or outside the company has become very important, mainly with the payment ecosystem here. Like we see so many fraudulent transactions or transactions where financial crimes are being transaction through which financial crimes are being done, and the transactions are done in a very rapid mode with all the transactions being processed, majority of the transactions being processed on real time basis. So it's very essential that the collaboration between the operations and the technology and compliance is very important. They should not work in silos, but should be integrated as an intelligence team to detect to uh, detect the analogies and typologies as to how the new kind of crimes are being happening in payment ecosystem, because this is since this is related to finance, money is involved. So and since digital payments have become the easiest mode for the fraudster to transfer the funds. So collaboration between not only within the departments like operations, who is in the forefront of knowing exactly what and monitoring the transactions. So they have monitoring tools, but that should not be restricted only to the operations team, but the compliance team should also have access to these monitoring tools. Even when designing products like our company, we design multiple payment and settlement systems. We have a national payment switch that we operate, and the
team who are involved, like the development team who are involved in the development of the product and services, they should be working closely with operations and also with the compliance team during the infrastructure development itself as to how the compliance requirement of FIU or the regulatory or should be incorporated or integrated within the payment system so that it is capable to mitigate the fraud or the issues at the initial stage itself. Besides that, I think we also require a ecosystem level collaboration, because we are a company who provide access to almost all the payment system operators and providers in the country, including the banks and financial institutions, and process transactions through the bank accounts. So we need to have a ecosystem level collaboration between the regulator and financial intelligence units and the law enforcement agencies, so that the incidents are shared among us. The possible typologies are shared among us, and we are in close coordination to restrict the frauds that are happening in the real-time basis. I hope I am able to answer your question.
Thank you so much. It's a very different world now because of digital payments and technology, and that's where I want to bring in Shubhada into the discussion. From a technology perspective, how can compliance leaders work with technology providers like yourself to ensure that the AML systems generate meaningful intelligence that support their decisions rather than just making technology a regulatory reporting tool? Shubhada, I think I am unable to hear you. Can anybody else confirm if they can hear her? No, right? No.
I think Shubhada has dropped out temporarily. I can't see her in the list.
No, I can see her on video, but I cannot hear her.
Let me join back again.
Oh, there
Yes,
you are.
yes. Now we can hear you.
Okay,
Go ahead.
all right. So I was thanking you and Shirish because it's really a privilege and a pleasure to be here. And Arpita, the question that you've asked is really building on what the panelists have sort of said so far. But I have a little different perspective about this, and my perspective is that it is the organizations who should also change their mindset about the role of an AML officer, and make the AML officer, make them a business enabler. And why I'm saying is that the compliance officer, the AML compliance officer, can really contribute in many, many different ways. One is that they have access to AML data. So they can contribute to the unified data architecture. That means the system will now have the AML data as well as the CRM data, the fraud data. So suddenly you have a complete 360 degrees information on the customer, which means that from the purposes of business, the low risk customers can be provided appropriate products. Similarly, if instead of just using, in case of transaction monitoring, just using a rule-based transaction monitoring model, if the move happens to prediction analysis, then rather than just flagging a suspicious transaction, we are moving more towards predictive analysis, where we are creating patterns. And these patterns, using all the data points, will hopefully help an FI to isolate high-risk jurisdictions. And when these high-risk jurisdictions are isolated, it is easy to create appropriate controls on these high-risk jurisdictions. And thirdly, it's very important for human to be a part of the loop, because you won't require a human to fine-tune technology. And I think a fine example, which embodies all these points, would actually be a compliance by design model, which is adopted by challenger banks and fintechs now, where the compliance manager now actually moves from being a gatekeeper to a business enabler using technology?
Thank you. Thank you. That's very interesting. I think what you said about, using the data into a 360-degree view and then actually doing a lot with it. So fantastic. I think we have one question that Siv has already answered, but if anyone else would like to take that, it's a very interesting question actually by Manil Bonilla. How do you maintain the independence between the compliance team and the operations team and the leadership when you provide recommendations? I think that's a very interesting point that she's brought in. Any of the panelists would like to volunteer their opinion on this question? Me, Attorney Nalit.
Hi. Thanks, Harpita. Just because I just wanted to correct the notion that just because we're part of the decisioning or we're part of the creation or conceptualization process, it doesn't mean that we no longer have any independence. Because at the end of the day, um, decisions are made collectively. It's not made by any one person, whether first line, second line. It's the organization's decision. So how do we demonstrate independence now? So that's why it's very clear that when we do risk assessments, it is properly documented. And when a decision is made, the rationale of that decision is also documented. Sometimes we document to just say, okay, this is a decision period, but the rationale is equally important as the decision itself. Second is when the firm has already made a decision, that is where our independent monitoring comes in. Whether what has been agreed has been implemented, whether the process has been implemented as agreed, the controls have been put in place. And of course, we have to ensure that any items that we have identified in the assessment as a gap or needs mitigation and remediation have also been addressed. So that is where our oversight responsibilities now come in. So just because we were part of the initial concept decision making doesn't mean that later on we can say, oh, sorry, I can no longer be independent. No, because these are different parts of the process.
Right. Thank you. That's a fantastic answer. Thank you so much to our second panel for those very, very insightful, thoughts. Please stay on till the end if we have any more questions. But now we're going to move on to the final panel for the day. And I'm delighted again to welcome our final group of panelists. Once again, a reminder that you'll find their LinkedIn profiles on our website. Thank you so much, ladies, for waiting. Let me introduce the third panelist, panelists for the third panel. Julia Chin, trainer, Fintelekt from Singapore. We have Subhashni Iyer, Chief Operating Officer from Quantum Data Engines, India. We have Borain Kaur, Chief Legal and Compliance Officer of J Trust Royal Bank in Cambodia. We have Prajana Kayastha, Head Risk and Compliance, Nepal Clearinghouse from Nepal. And we also have Joey Tang, Head of Compliance and MLRO APAC, Banking Circle, Singapore. Once again, thank you so much for joining. Fantastic to see you all online. I think again, moving on from the second panel, one message that, clearly emerged for me is that compliance functions are expected to play a much more strategic role and contribute to, various aspects of decision making and risk management in the organization. But ultimately, many of the critical decisions about the risk appetite, about governance, about accountability are made at the level of the board and senior management. So for compliance leaders, this raises an important question. How do you ensure that financial crime risks are clearly understood and given the attention that they deserve at the highest levels of decision making? So again, the ability of compliance leaders to communicate those risks and influence those decisions and build credibility with board and senior leadership becomes that much more important. And that's what we want to discuss on the final panel for the morning. So I'm going to start with, the perspective of our very own trainer, Julia. from your rich experience in the financial services sector and now on the training and advisory side, working with compliance professionals in many countries, what do you think and what have you seen are the common mistakes that leaders make, or shortcomings, if we may call it that, when presenting AML or sanctions risks to boards? And how can they communicate these issues more strategically? Over to you, Julia.
Thanks, Avita, for having this panel. I think this is really timely. Okay, so I think from the perspective of board or compliance leaders, one of the things that we have always forgotten about is, I write this newsletter called the fourth perspective, which is from the human lens of compliance as well. We have the regulators, institutions, technology. They take plenty of airtime. I think one of the area that is not getting enough of airtime is human. So when you think about thinking about the mistakes that we commonly make is that, remember this, board presence isn't about authority or expertise alone. It's about building trust. So the board needs to trust that we understand the business, not just the regulations. Tell them the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. I've written a lot about compliance or rather courageous integrity before. So, they need to know the truth. Without knowing the truth, they won't be able to make the right decisions. So we also need to be able to translate complexity into clarity. So we want to try to avoid the use of jargon because, we have got to be mindful that not every individual will have the same background as us. And we don't just go to the board and say, okay, we have a problem. But we also need to be able to exercise judgment. That's what leaders do anyway, right? So, and I think, again, back to the kind of mistakes that get repeated is that the first is you walk in with transaction monitoring stats, SAR volumes, regulatory updates and say, okay, we have this transaction monitoring stats and stuff. And then the board will go, what exactly does good look like? They wouldn't know if 500 SAR is a crisis or business as usual, right? So we have to think about, so what? What's the one thing that keeps you up at night? And what are we doing about it? Not just what is keeping us awake, but what are we doing about it? And remember this, board always thinks in terms of reputation, capital, strategy, competitive advantage, and to be able to sustain the business. So basically also about not just about everything is high risk, this is high risk. Don't scare them. We lose credibility if we highlight everything that is a risk without there are two parts of it. One is to talk too much about the risk and to scare everybody and then not having any proposed solution, not even looking at it from a risk-based approach. And then the other thing is, on the flip side, is we keep quiet. And when something happens, the board gets blindsided. So the credibility is where we have this communication. We are able to say high, medium, low risk, right? So we have actually talked a lot about that as well. Then the third is actually compliance speak. Don't use jargon. Have more commercial context. We don't say things like, oh, the CDD overdue rate is like this, or we need to enhance our CDD framework. It means nothing to somebody who's not in our part, in our circle. So when we talk to a board of directors that not every one of them knows compliance, is that our current onboarding process is losing us about 15% of good customers while not catching the bad ones. Right. So think about it from the perspective that, so the dashboard says this. What does it mean to the board? So that's about, don't talk dashboard. Presenting, basically I mentioned this about, presenting the problems without option. You think about giving them options, telling them about the pros and cons or a recommendation. So that's where the judgment comes in. After all, we're talking about compliance leaders, right? So we need to be able to exercise that. Then the next mistake is actually not knowing our audience. When we present to the audit committee, it will be very different than presenting to say, for example, the remuneration committee. So we need to know our audience. We need to tailor the content, know the audience before we walk into the room. And of course, never forget the human story. We need to have the story behind it. I think I may not have mentioned Pulse, which is a proprietary program framework that I developed, which stands for people, undertaking, leadership, structure, and ecosystem. And in the L, which is leadership, we talk about engage, enable, and empower. So basically, that's what I wanted to say, is that are we engaging the board in a way that enables them to govern effectively? Are we empowering them with clarity without overwhelming them with complexity? So basically, the best compliance leaders are the ones that make something really complex clear, and they take what's technical and make it sound human, or humanize it in a way. So I get back to you on that, Afita.
Thank you, Julia. Lovely words of wisdom from you. And I like what you said about translating complexity to simplicity, and that's probably the most complex thing in all of it. And let's explore that a little further. I'm going to turn to Boren. As the legal and compliance leader in your institution, how do you actually practically do this, especially to resonate with board members who may not have that technical expertise every time, right? So how do you really translate complex regulatory, legal, risk messages into something that the board can easily understand?
Thank you, Aptika, and good afternoon and happy festive weeks of the International Women's Day to everyone. First, let me thank Aptika and Shiris for putting together this wonderful session and trusting me in this discussion. So it is always pleasing to be together in a place or in a platform like this where we can learn, we can share, and we can laugh a little bit while discussing something serious like compliance. So compliance is serious, and compliance is not exciting in its nature. So my job is to translating it into something more attractive, more exciting. So when we talk about the translation, my first job back after school was being a translator, but what I'm doing today is not what I did after school back that time. So while translating the complex or unattractive or unexciting things like compliance risk to something that is understandable and actionable by the board, I use four approach. So first thing first, I speak business rather than legal. So being in the board, I always remind myself that I'm not giving the lecture. I'm not coming here in order to cite the regulation to the board, because the board is not interested in hearing for example, Article 100 paragraph 1. So it's quite annoying. So rather than citing the regulation and the provision in the law, I speak the business language. Like, for example, what is the impact of the new regulation? What is the impact of this gap in the compliance, translating into the impact, the operational impact or financial impact, for example, for possible fine, or the impact on the reputation. For example, if we maintain this gap without doing anything, and then the correspondent banks or the big customer may put down their trust on us, for example. So this is the first approach. Second approach is the storytelling, because I like storytelling, but this storytelling is storytelling with purpose. So in my report to the board, always we include, or I and my team include always the external events. So we would tell the board what is happening in another company, what is happening in the region, in another part of the world, and then how that similar risk can happen in our organization, in our environment, and what are our strengths in the controls and what are our gaps. So tell them the story, so to make them feel the risk rather than just hear the risk, because compliance are sometimes very abstract. So without attaching them to the real life example, then they would just hear it without feeling it. The third approach is to use the dashboard. So I am a lawyer, so sometimes lawyers are very narrative. We like writing. Writing is our job, and being long, being narrative is the lawyer's job. Being the compliance officer, I need to be succinct. I need to be straight to the point, and so in order to translate the complexity into something understandable to the board, I use the dashboard, the red, amber, green status, and sometimes the trends in order to make it simple and understandable, because board of directors, they do not have time and they do not have patience to understand, to listen to our lecture. And the last point is the alignment of the compliance into the business strategy. So many panelists addressed this already, that we would like to repaint the compliance from being the break or being something that obstruct the business to something that enable the business and make the business make a better decision. So as a compliance officer, I need to understand the business. I need to understand their pain points and translate them into something that the compliance can fix and can play a role in there. So aligning the compliance into the business strategy is important in the boardroom as well. For example, in order to convince the board to invest in something, in upgrading of the compliance system, then we would tell them the consequence or the result. For example, this upgrade of the system would benefit or would shorten the onboarding process of the customer, for example, or improve the governance and gain more trust, promote more reputation to the stakeholder and to the customer. Yeah. Thank you. I hope I
Thank you,
answered
Borin,
your
and
question.
it's absolutely, and I love the energy that you brought to this conversation. It's fantastic. Subhashri, I'm going to bring you in here. A couple of things that Borin said, storytelling with purpose, and she also spoke about simple dashboards. And I'm going to change, this track to the role of technology and understanding how in institutions it can actually change what boards are expecting from compliance leaders over the next few years, especially with AI and ML being such a buzzword. How have you seen in your experience the role of technology in organizations changing?
Thank you, Arpita, and thank you, Julia and Boren, to kind of set the tone for this conversation as to, what conversations kind of happen in the boardroom and how, these data points basically get discussed and how it needs to be presented. Specifically, I'm going to answer this question by saying that, I'm going to start with a quote, to be or not to be, right? I'm sure you get the analogy that I'm trying to draw here with the AI specific conversation. So with the rise in basically artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the generative AI, the boardroom discussions today are all about adoption of these technologies, specifically in compliance, right? So I think financial institutions are facing twofold pressure. While on one side there is an urgency to adopt artificial intelligence, innovate, and lead to basically faster decision making. There is also, on the other side, there is pressure to increase the oversight to navigate the tightening regulation, right? So while AI is still riding the hype cycle, there is a very strong nudge that is put in place to practice, to put in place all the AI technologies, but with a lot of caution. So specifically in terms of using of technology, there are three aspects that I want to bring in. In terms of addressing um, um, the aspects like, how do you basically generate the data that you generate out of all of this, that you are going to bring in terms of the metrics that you are collating as part of your your operations, how you're going to present it as intelligence summaries, right? So you can basically put some frameworks in place that can bring these perspectives out, put the assessments and the mapping of these controls that are in place, assess the controls itself using AI, and then presenting the trajectory or the movement, in a fashion where it is understandable to the business. Like, for example, we should, if you're kind of seeing a lot of increase in the money mule reporting that is happening, you should be able to tie up to saying that this is happening due to, let's say, recent introduction of non face-to-face onboarding that we are seeing, and basically bring a correlation to these two aspects, and then kind of make a presentation across. And to give another example is basically say that there are 10,000 customers that are being assigned medium risk, because of missing mandatory information, right? So you should be able to make these, while there are metrics that you have collated as part of your compliance, assessment, and in the frameworks that you have put in place, you should be able to make these presentations with, by quoting, saying that, what exactly it is going to lead, and what other aspects that we need to put in place, or controls that have to be put in place. And the third aspect is basically linking your analytics to, how do you say that, there is effectiveness that is in play, right? Like, my controls are effective enough. So you can look at aspects as to how bringing in, let's say, a false positive reduction as one of your automation, or your AML backed, system that you have put in place, how you're able to improve your priority STRs filing, or you're able to say is that, the alert to STR filing ratio has gone up because of, the people are able to spend more time in actually looking at, issues that are suspicious, while the low hanging fruits, which are straightforward kind of false positives, you're able to kind of close them faster without having, while someone monitoring the loop, but not really actually spending time in all of these closures. The fourth one is, of course, going to be, the mitigation plan. What is under control and what is not. Going back to basically what we were saying is, what specific aspects that I have to take care. Let's take the same example that I quoted earlier, saying that non-face-to-face customers, what additional security that I need to put in place? What are the additional technology aspects that I need to bring in to be able to put those additional controls? Like, do I, get biometrics data in place? Do I look at all the data points that can be collected in terms of device identification and things like that? So how do I put those extra specific data, or controls in place to be able to mitigate all of these? So these are, for the basic 4 steps that I would say, which technology can enable, while you are able to go and make a presentation and make your arguments to the board, and convince them to, to kind of say, probably address aspects that you want them to kind of focus on, and bring on as part of your GRC processes. And and also, the one portion that I want to add here is, like, while we are working on the enterprise wide risk aspect of it, I think there is also a necessity to kind of keep an eye out for your how aligned are we with your national risk assessment as well, right? Like, keeping the nation also in place, how our alignment as an enterprise, we are able to do that with them. So in summary, I kind of am going to lean back on what Boren said. Compliance leaders should use technology outputs to tell a clear story about financial crime risk, and with clear data backed insights, and clear actions in place.
Thank you so much, Subhashni. Thank you. And I think we've spoken quite a lot about communication and technology, but boardroom presence is also shaped by the leadership experience and personal credibility, like, Julia was talking about. So I'm going to turn to Prajana and Joey to reflect on, your own leadership journey, starting with you, Prajana. By way of gender dynamics, what advice would you really offer based on your own journey to women aspiring to leadership roles in risk and compliance? Prajana.
Thank you, Arpita, and the Fintelekt team, and all your panelists for enlightening the session related to the AML related and the boardroom presence of the compliance leader. Regarding the gender biasness, thankfully, in the current organization, even there is no such gender biasness because we have the lean modality and all the people have access to the all the CXOs or the department heads. So there is not such experience in my the current organization, but I had a few bad experiences of the gender biasness during my charter accountancy article C period. Nevertheless, my advice to the young women aspiring leaders who want to make big in the risk and compliance domain would be first do the ground research or the groundwork, have the ground basis clear. So whenever you are being part of a boardroom discussion or the stakeholders meeting, do your research. Be prepared for the what you are or how you are going to deliver to the team of the audience who may be from the different backgrounds. Be all prepared for the all the WH questions because there will be the varied group of people who will have different kind of expectations. Also, the board people or the stakeholders will have the different kind of priority. So aligning the priority with the compliance aspect and the risk aspect is the one of the major challenging part which we as a compliance leader need to focus on. And the second being we need to be confident and receptive. Often the female leaders are interpreted as being bossy or arrogant. Um, it is important to put your point or make yourself heard, but it is also important to be receptive and listen to others. In an organization, since there will be the different kind of teams and usually in the interdepartment communications or the meeting, there will be like a scenario where the different team will have different priorities. So when there is like an interaction, there will be like a communication, there will be like a scenario wherein the different people are talking in a different language, but in fact they are talking, communicating in the same language. So as a compliance leader or the um, compliance team member, our role will be to bridge the gap or understand what other team is trying to interpret. And like said earlier in the earlier panel that we are like creating a healthier friction and understanding the business or the enabling the business. So our role will not be to just say straightforward no or yes. We should be like providing the alternative solution. Say, for example, in a boardroom, in a discussion related with the interdepartment, the business team will have the target to for the sales or the business uptake. However, my team or me myself will have the target to meet target to ensure that the compliance requirement is met and the risk mitigation is in place. So, if both the team are only focusing on their individual objective, there will not be the work synergy, which is not beneficial for the organization. So it is important to have that kind of synergy, and we as a compliance user need to offer kind of an alternative solution, which was earlier also touched upon based by the earlier panelists also. So sometimes instead of straight no or the rigidness, what we offer on the table will be a real game changer. And apart from that, I feel that all the women leaders are uniquely capable enough to sign in their role, whatever role, be it related to compliance or operation or the technology or business. So all we need is a right kind of support, trust, and the opportunity to prove. I think that's the
Right.
thing we need to focus.
Thank you, Prajana. That's fantastic. Yes, we all need the support. Joey, coming to you, from this new age fintech sort of perspective, do you think that leadership opportunities for women are evolving differently in newer services compared to more traditional institutions? What has been your experience over your compliance journey? And if I may also ask you the same question that I asked, Prajana, what would you really, what kind of message would you give to aspiring women leaders in compliance? Over to you, Joy.
Hey, hi, Apita. Thank you. Can you hear me clearly? Just to
Yes,
confirm.
yes,
Okay, great.
yes.
Thank you, Apita. Greetings from Europe, where I am currently. Wishing everybody good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. It's a privilege to join this panel on a very meaningful occasion. So, wishing everybody a very happy International Women's Day to all. Yeah, so with regards to your question, leadership opportunities for women in compliance are certainly evolving and in slightly different ways depending on the type of organization. In traditional financial institutions, compliance has been long established functions. So roles like MLRO, chief compliance officers, are pretty well defined, and many institutions have structured leadership development programs as well. So there is an established framework for progression, even if the pace can sometimes be a bit slower because of the hierarchical structures. In newer financial services company like fintechs, payment firms, the environment is quite different. Compliance leaders often join at an earlier stage where the company is growing and it's much closer. The compliance officer is much closer to the strategic decisions, the product design, expansion to new markets. That creates opportunities to influence how governance frameworks are actually being built from ground up, and it can be incredibly rewarding as well. So it follows the pace. It's extremely fast paced. There may be more opportunities to move forward in a quicker manner, but at the same time, you will also see a lot more younger leaders, evolving in this space. At the same time, the fintech leadership overall is still quite male dominated, so representation at the top still remains to be a work in progress. And I think that this also means that there's a lot of opportunities for women leaders to emerge. What I do find encouraging is compliance itself is becoming a lot more strategic, right? As to what all my fellow panel contributors were speaking about, and financial crime risk, regulatory expectations, cross-border payments have also become a lot more complex. Organizations increasingly need, compliance leaders to breach regulation, business strategy, and technology, and to be able to relate to the board. So all of these are areas that, when the shift naturally opens up for more leadership opportunities for women, these skill sets are certainly required and broader than what it used to be.
Thank you. That's very well said. Fantastic. I think this has been great. At this point, I'm going to request all our panelists who are currently logged in to maybe come back online. We can take a couple of more questions. Shirish, are you there?
Yes, right here.
You said you had one question for everyone.
Yeah, so, well, if there are no questions from the audience yet, let me start off the Q&A. So, one question which comes to mind, which I thought I'll ask whoever wants to comment on, what would you say is the most underestimated skill in compliance?
Maybe I can take a stab at it.
Sure, Julie.
I think the most underrated skill is to be human. I think a lot of times we forget, and especially in this day and age of artificial intelligence, there has been a lot of redundancy, right? And there's a lot of worry across the industry as well that we are going to lose our job. Compliance of white collar workers are going to lose our jobs because of AI. I think that's where we need to be mindful about, is that I love to talk about the 3 C's of human superpower plus one. Number 1 C is compassion. Compassion here means we are able to empathize, we are able to understand the context. So compassion is not just about being kind. The second one is about curiosity. AI cannot be curious, no matter how much you can teach it to be. It can analyze, but it's not curious. That's not that's not the nature of artificial intelligence. The third one is creativity. Creativity is not about drawing art and all that. It's about the ability to connect the dots. And someone just recently had this conversation with me, and I added the fourth C, which is common sense. So I go back to you now, Shirish.
Thanks, Julia. I would say there's a fifth C, and that is chin for Julia Chin.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else wants to take?
Shirish, adaptability is what I can tell, if I can say. So you need to keep the flow of business going and keep things, even as you're doing compliance and ensuring everything is safe. You also need to have the things moving, right? It should be fluid and yet you should manage. I think that's very underrated skill.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Can I come in?
Yeah.
I think patience is also one of the skills, which is really underrated. You really have to be patient to see things through. And importantly, persuasion. You need to persuade the board to give you a seat at the table. Unless and until the compliance officer cannot persuade the board to give you a seat at the table, it will be very difficult. We will always be the gatekeepers. We will never be the business enablers. So I think that's a very important skill, we should develop.
Thank you so much.
Series, for me, I think the soft skill and the ability of staying calm during the chaotic situation is something that is important, but sometimes undermined because we are living in the VUCA environment. We are living in a very chaotic environment. So people are rushing. People are rushed to make the judgment. We tend to be very noisy. We tend to break the silence. But sometimes, like Julia said, we need to stay as human. So remember our ability of being human, being staying calm during the chaotic situation, and this is something that builds trust faster than anything.
Thanks, Puran. Yes, very well said. In fact, I was listening to what you were saying on the panel, and I think one of the things you mentioned is the art of telling stories. I think people remember very well when things are said in story form, and I think that's one very important point that you brought about. So I think actually that's a very underestimated skill, and I think if compliance officers have that skill, I think that adds a lot of value.
Great.
Can
Fantastic.
I contribute for the same question?
Yes, Teja, please.
Yes, Teja.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a very relevant question. I think we keep heavily we invest in onboarding and KYC and policies, training, risk assessment. But I think ongoing monitoring should also receive, it is continuous, dynamic. That is, I feel like somewhat underscaled, under-resourced, and underappreciated area in compliance. So our volume keeps increasing, but teams do not, right? So most monitoring is still manual, and sometimes we see as the regulator rule-based, and behavioral patterns change faster than models do. So low investment compared to onboarding. So we see big budgets by institutions into KYC tools and all those fancy things. But the maintenance, the ongoing monitoring, I feel like we need as an AML CFT officers, women officers. I think you also will feel the same. So organizations treat onboarding as the main event, but regulators treat onboarding monitoring as well as rules should be tested. So I think that's my contribution for your question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Teja.
Great. I think we'll leave the last word to the only man on this forum, Shirish.
Well, maybe the second last one, because I'm sure there's going to be a last word from you after that.
I think there's one question, if we can quickly take it. It's come in chat. What
Okay.
key things can you advise a young female professional looking to get into leadership roles? I think we did touch upon a little bit, but if anybody wants to specifically answer this question, please. Can I repeat the question? What key things can you advise a young female professional looking to get into leadership roles?
Right. I think Subha, you were about to answer.
Yeah. So like any other role that a young female leader for any young female to get into a leadership role, like any other role, it is going to be basically a lot of courage to be able to speak your voice and back it up with enough. I think as women we kind of also tread very cautiously. I think it's a good thing because when you're trying to step out of your comfort zone and kind of make noise, I think it should have a lot of data backing evidence and be able to make that. I think you should be able to do really well in any leadership role, let alone just compliance roles.
Hi. I think I want to share a little bit on this one. Can
Yes,
everyone
Sid.
hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So for me personally, I think confidence is the main key, and coming with the respect and always be prepared. So somehow you are confident. It have to be coming with well prepared. So if you want to speak it out, you have to know the consequences. You have to understand the risk. You have to be well prepared. What is the response would be? What is the challenging questions or follow-up questions? So you have to be prepared, and then your confidence will come. And I think the main important thing is that you need to be understand what is the role. So it's not that, oh, because you are young, because you are incompliant, you cannot independent. You have to be understand what is your job, your role and responsibility is, and you did not have to afraid to share what is the risk can expose to the bank. And I think the point is that once you are have the courage to impose those understanding and imposing those into your daily activity, there is nothing that can stop you from fulfill your job. So this is what I think I can share to the young leadership. Yeah.
Hi.
Thanks. I think a lot of you want to contribute. So Neeti, can we start with you?
Thank you. I'll just quickly add. I think for young professionals, I think it's important to network and also find mentors. I think that's a useful thing, especially if you're young and you are early in your career. I think that's something that, as compliance professionals, sometimes we forget to do. Right? We need to be out there. We need to be, going to events and getting to know other people. And I think mentorship is quite useful and it's important, especially for compliance professionals like ourselves who have been in the business for many years. It's good for us to also mentor the younger professionals.
Right. Thank you. Muni?
Yes, adding on to what other speakers have already said, that one of the quality for the young leader should be you should empathize with people around you. You need to understand their perspective and always take decision or suggest any decision. What is the right thing to do is something that you need to know. You need to listen to everyone, but what is right thing to do is to be speak out, and that should be you should be in a team who hears you, who takes the point you have put forward, and you should not always go with some problems. You should have, like earlier panelist also said, that we need to have alternate solutions which need to be provided. So the young leaders who come up with problems, I think it's very difficult for them to lead, but those who come up with solutions are the one who lead, despite be it women or men. So that is what I would like to suggest to the young people out here.
Thank you. That's very useful. I think, Joey, you wanted to contribute as well.
Yeah, sure. I just want to build on the point around mentor. So a mentor gives advice, a sponsor puts their reputation on their line to advocate for you. So look for sponsors as well. And in compliance, it's a field where visibility and trust is everything. Being able to lead and influence without people reporting to you is also very important, because you need to influence the business, you need to influence many stakeholders. So you need all of this. Remember, mentors help you to grow, sponsors help you to rise.
That's very well said. Boren, do you want to also contribute?
Since Iris is here, I don't want him to feel pressure surrounded by all the women. So I would like to touch something on gender, because I see the tendency of competition between male and female. So I just want to say that it's not about the competition. It's not that men are better than women or vice versa, women are better than men. So at the end of the day, it's not about somebody is better than somebody. So being a woman, we have the gift, we have the potentials. So use our gift, our natural gift, our potentials, and then gang up with men. So synergize the energy, synergize the knowledge, the experience in order to improve our home, to improve our company, and for the betterness of the whole world. So it's not about the competition, but the complement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think Teja also had her hand raised.
Yes, Apita, I really agree with all the panelists. Very useful advices for young women leaders who is going to emerge in the future compliance market. So my contribution, first of all, if you want to build up a nice palace, looking good, but it has to be a strong, right? So for that palace to build up, we need a good base or a foundation. So your foundation is your technical knowledge. So compliance is a vast area, so you need to be knowledgeable, be aware what are the emerging requirements, and you need to have a sound knowledge. For that, I recommend young women leaders, please educate yourself first and gradually take your time. Let yourself to be evolved with a very good base of knowledge. Knowledge matters. So that's my message for the future leaders in this arena. Thank you, Apita.
We have 1 last minute, Julia. Please.
Okay, so I really like what Boren said about, actually men and women are different, and that's why we complement each other rather than to compete with each other. That's number one. Number two is that I know that within this particular group itself, a lot of us are actually very shy, introvert, me included, surprise, surprise. But one of the things to remember is, don't be ever shy to speak up, especially when we know that what we have to offer can make the difference to people around us. So always think about that whenever we think that, I'm too shy to say something. Think about it, that who will be impacted? How am I going to make a difference with the voice that I have? Back to you.
Yes. Thank you. I think we're at the end of time. This has been absolutely fantastic. I have really, really enjoyed interacting with all of you. Thank you so much for joining us, for sharing so many words of wisdom with our audience. And fantastic. Thanks once again. And Shirish, it's over to you.
Oh, all right. Thanks, Arpita. And, thanks to all of you wonderful women who took part in these 3 panel discussions today. I think I'm privileged that I've been the only man being allowed to speak on this session. So thanks very much for that privilege. I think, your participation reminded me of, that famous quote by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. As you know, she was the second woman and the first Jewish woman to serve the US Supreme Court, and in her lifetime has inspired generations of women to break gender barriers. What she said was, for both men and women, the first step in getting power is to become visible to others and then to put on an impressive show. I think Joey also touched on visibility, right? So as women achieve power, the barriers will fall. As society sees what women can do, as women see what other women can do, there will be more women out there doing things, and we'll all be better off for it. So I have to thank each one of you for being visible to others in the industry, and actually for helping to make this a very impressive webinar, for inspiring your colleagues and friends to also aspire to do what you are doing. You may not know it now, but I'm sure that you have touched the hearts and minds of so many people across Asia that have participated in this webinar today. With that, let me say bye and thanks to all of you. And as it happens in office today and every day, let me hand it back to Arpita so that she can have the final word.
I think that's all.
I think she's
thank you
going
so
to hand
much
it
once
over
again.
to you, and you're going to hand it over to her.
Collaboration, not competition. In that spirit, thanks again. Thanks to the audience as well for joining us, for all the wonderful comments that you're leaving in chat for this webinar. We will have this available on YouTube. We are also planning to hand out participation certificates for today's webinar, which you will receive in the next over the next few days via email. So thanks once again, and have a great day ahead, and happy International Women's Day week to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and wishing you the same. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
So, bye-bye.
Thank you.